back-to-back national championships, and the current #2 class in the nation, things are getting bad out here, and I can't rely on this guy to stop them. I've had enough. It's time Georgia got the death penalty. As you may or may not know, the so-called death penalty has been given out only one time in the history of college football. After paying players for several years, the SMU Mustangs were hit with the deadliest sanctions the world of sports has ever seen. This turned one of the better programs in the 1980s into one of the worst. From the year 1989 to 2008, the Mustangs would only have one season where they finished with a winning record. But enough about SMU. It's time to discuss the sanctions that I gave Georgia. For starters, Georgia would be forced to forfeit every team win in school history, meaning that Alabama and TCU would be the last two champs. Georgia would also have to forfeit their next two seasons, cut every player on their current roster, and forfeit bowl games for 2 years once they came back. And worst of all, they would be decimated in recruiting. To sum it up, Georgia would only be allowed to recruit one-star players for the first year. Each year this would go up by 1 star, as in the second season they'd be allowed to recruit 2 stars, and this would continue all the way up until they were allowed to recruit 4-star athletes after 4 seasons, but they would never be allowed to recruit 5-star players ever again. Please comment down below any other schools you think should be given the death penalty, along with why you think that should be happening. Now let's get to rebuilding. Along with the violations, Georgia would be forced to fire their head coach, Kirby Smart, so in turn they were able to find their next candidate in Kirby Dumb. I know it's a stupid name for a coach, bear with me, I have a 5-year-old sense of humor. And head coach Kirby Dumb would also be given a set of goals that he needed to complete at his time at Georgia. Like always, this would be played on Heisman difficulty, and this is what the team looks like going into season 1 with only 3 players above 69 overall. As mentioned, for the first year, Kirby Dumb would only be allowed to recruit 1-star players. This would lead to a majority of all players being in the high 60s, but most of them would end up being in the low 60s. The team was so bad that an FCF school looks 10 times better than us. No matter the outcome of this game, there wouldn't be a good team winning, as both teams were absolutely atrocious. And like usual with my rebuilds, I'd only be allowed to play 3 games each season, not including conference championships or bowl games, so this was the first one I'd be jumping into this season, but I wouldn't be jumping into many more considering how bad the team was. We were able to finally tie the game late in the second quarter, leading to the score being 3 apiece at halftime. This is Georgia's 4th game into the season, and they're 0-3 up until this point, and Philip Jacobs was able to get us on the board, getting a touchdown, and from there we were able to hold on to the rest of the lead and the first win of the season for the Bulldogs. That led to several players committing, but of course there wasn't that many good ones, and besides that FCS game, we didn't end up winning a single game the rest of the season, and we ended up pulling in the worst class in the nation, even though we had 25 1-star players commit to the program. This is what the team looked like after one season, with a couple players being at 75 overall, and with it being the second year of the rebuild, Coach Kirby was finally able to look at 2-star players. So overall, the team would jump up from 57 to 65, still atrocious, and 8 games into the season, their only win so far was against another Division II team. The recruiting class was looking a lot better than it did last year, with a couple great players sprinkled in there, but most of them were above the 65 overall threshold, and the Bulldogs were looking to get their second win of the season against FCS East. Of course, in this game, they'd have tons of prospects visiting the team, and Coach Dem was looking to get his first multi-win season of his young coaching career against FCS here, and we were able to get off to an early 14-0 lead, and it was proof that the team had made big jumps from last season, as they were dominating FCS late in the 4th quarter, and after our defense was able to clutch up, getting a key stop on 4th and inches, our offense would be able to run out the clock from there, and what was an overall really good team win. We would improve in season number 2 by getting 2 wins, but they were both against FCS schools, and after 2 seasons, Kirby Dumb still hasn't knocked off any goals on his sheet. Even though the team was looking horrible, at least they were moving in the right trajectory, and there were even some players that transferred to the program due to them getting intense playing time. Georgia would sign 21 2-star prospects, leading to them breaking the top 100, and yes, the CPU did sign 1 3-star, so I made sure to cut him before the next season. Each year the team was looking better and better, and we finally had some players over 80 overall, and that was great, as Kirby Dumb is now able to recruit 3-star players. And I gotta say, it is very nice actually seeing some players above 70 overall instead of the usual consistent low 60s. And speaking of 70 overalls, Georgia was now above that threshold in every single aspect of their game, as they've been making extreme improvements every year. I'd be jumping into the first game of the season against FCS West because I wanted to get the team off to a good start. After being down by 7, Will Terrell was able to tie the game. The team as a whole hadn't been playing that well due to the weather being extremely wet, and Will Terrell was able to make a great throw, finding Taylor, streaking up the middle, getting close to the end zone, and the read option has been working all day, so we continued it here, getting a touchdown. Our defense was able to force a stop, and our offense was able to get all the way down the field, and Will Terrell found his tight end for a wide open touchdown. And now it lead to another big victory in a game that turned out to be a blowout. Somehow, 5 games into the season, Georgia was sitting at a 3-2 record, and I had no idea how they were doing it, but it was time for me to play my first SEC game with Georgia, as we had tons of 3-star prospects coming to this game. Now, the team had been improving each and every year, but I had no idea how Georgia was sitting at a 3-2 record, as the team was a mid-70 overall, and they were destroying all expectations set prior to this season. Will Terrell was looking like he was a formidable quarterback, as our offense had been improving and looking really good so far this year, and even though Will Terrell isn't the fastest player, he was able to break away from a tackle and somehow outrun the cornerback on the left side, getting a touchdown. Mizzou would cut into our lead in the very next possession, as our lead was now down to 4, but Jeremy Taylor was streaking up up the middle for seemed like what he'd been doing all year, and all we needed to do now was run out the rest of the clock, and that's exactly what we were able to do as Will Terrell added more points on the board, and we had a good 10-point victory over Missouri. That led to a couple good recruits committing to our program, and Georgia continued defying all odds as they destroyed Vanderbilt in the next game. They would come down to earth with a huge loss to Florida, but it was time for us to step into another crucial game against Colorado State because, of course, we had tons of prospects visiting the team. Georgia was sitting at a 5-3 record to this point, so if they won this game, they would be bowl eligible, but after that costly drop by one of our receivers, we would be down by 4 points going into halftime. As mentioned, we were trying to become bowl eligible in this game, and it seemed like Colorado State was matching all of our punches as we had been playing horrible this entire game, and late in the fourth, they were able to extend their lead to 6 points, so if we had any chance of winning this game, we needed to make sure that we got a touchdown, which we were unable to do, and that was a devastating loss in the season. We would finish 2-1 the rest of the year, leading to us having a 7-5 record, and Kirby Dunn was able to knock off one of his goals because he finally had a winning season. Kirby also had a chance to knock off another goal as he had a bowl game against Kansas, and he and I still have no idea how Georgia did this good this year because of how bad the team was on paper. Riding the momentum of this season, Will Terrell got our offense down on the first drive, and he was able to find his receiver for a touchdown. And honestly, at this point, whenever we stepped in, it seemed like our offense was unstoppable besides that game against Colorado State as we were able to get another touchdown here, and the Jayhawks were finally making some movement as they were able to get a score on their next possession. All of a sudden, it was a 3-point game, and late in the fourth quarter, Will Terrell fumbled the ball, and the Jayhawks were able to get the ball back, and all of a sudden, we were on the brink of blowing a 13-point lead as the Jayhawks were now defending a lead of 4 points, and we were trying to get down the field to cut into it. Each time that I played with this team, Terrell would impress me with some great throws, especially with this one here to Jeremy Taylor, and a few plays later, he was able to take the lead with Terrence Williams. The entire game would now come down to a last-second Hail Mary in which I saw the worst pass of all time, and Coach Kirby and the Bulldogs were able to have an excellent end to their season as they would go on to win their first bowl game in several years against Kansas, allowing Coach Kirby to knock off another one of his goals. That was by far the best season we had, and going into season number 4, we were hoping to build on it, but there were a decent amount of players along with Will Terrell leaving in this graduation. Being able to sign 3 stars allowed Georgia to have the 33rd best class in the nation, and the team was starting to look really good. Of course, with it being year number 4, we were now finally allowed to start looking at 4-star players, and Coach Dunn was extremely good at convincing players to commit to our program as he was able to do that 4 times in the first week. Georgia now sat with an 81 overall, and throughout the first 3 games, they were sitting with a 2-1 record. Georgia was growing confident in themselves, and they were looking to keep things going against the Oklahoma Sooners. This would be a conference matchup as Oklahoma joined the SEC several seasons ago, and they were able to get first blood by getting a touchdown, and we had a lot of new faces running the offense, and our quarterback Davis and our running back Wilson coming out of the backfield. Even with new faces being on the field, our offense was still able to drive all the way down the field, getting a touchdown to Dante Johnson, and even with our defense not playing well, Davis was able to scramble out to the right side, finding his tight end Cook for a touchdown, and going into halftime, we were only down by 3. It would take all the way until the fourth quarter for another team to get more points. Our defense was seeing the work our offense was putting in, and they were finally stepping up, getting a huge stop on 3rd and 5, and of course from there, we were looking to keep things on the ground, running out the rest of the clock, and Davis ran the triple option perfectly, leading to another score. That led to a huge victory, not only against an SEC opponent, but a ranked opponent, and that would also help our recruiting class tremendously. 7 games into the season, we were sitting at a 5-2 record, and I still have no idea how Georgia is playing this well in the simulation, and with an 81 overall, Georgia was sitting at number 2 in the SEC East. I know none of this is making sense to me either. They would go on to destroy another FCS school in the very next game, and it would finally be time to beat one of their main rivals in Florida. This game was basically like the SEC championship as both teams were number 1 and 2 in the conference, so it was great that we were able to get off to an early 10-0 lead. Florida was able to answer back, however, as they got 3 right before the half. With that field goal, they got ball at the beginning of the half, and they were able to tie the game, and on our next drive, we would have a key 4th down conversion that we were able to get to Dante Johnson somehow, and ever since those 2 first possessions, our offense had been looking slow, so Coach Kirby knew that we needed to get points on the board, and after running the option, Wilson was able to take it all the way down to the end zone for a score. Florida wasn't backing down though, as they were able to run straight down our throats, getting another score, but we were still looking good as we had the ball with 1:30 left, but after Davis got hit, he ended up fumbling the ball, giving it back to Florida, and Kirby Dunn made sure to cuss him out on the sidelines when he got over there. From there, our defense was unable to get a stop as Florida scored almost immediately, and it was now time for our offense to clutch up and make one key final drive, but Davis underthrew this pass leading to an interception, and the fans were devastated as we blew the game. The season was starting to get derailed as we would lose our next game to Auburn, and we were looking to pick things back up against Kentucky. Like normal, there would be tons of recruits coming to this game, and late in the 3rd quarter, we were controlling it, especially after getting another touchdown. The team was looking extremely good this game as they were able to extend their lead by even more in the 4th quarter, and that led to a dominating victory over a decent team. Georgia would lose their last game in bad fashion against Georgia Tech, and they would finish with another 7-5 record on the regular season, finishing 3rd in the SEC East. Georgia would go on to somehow beat number 13 USC in the bowl game, and going into season number 5, Kirby Dunn still had tons of goals that he needed to cross off. Like normal, there'd be tons of people graduating, including our number 1 quarterback, but there'd be great news as Georgia had the number 1 class in the nation finally being allowed to recruit 4-star players. That would lead to Kirby knocking off one of his goals as he had a top 5 class, and the team going into next year was looking really good as they finally had a player over 90 overall. As mentioned earlier, even though we were in year 5, we still wouldn't be allowed to recruit 5-star players for the entirety of this rebuild. The team made big jumps in the offseason, jumping up to an 83, and the offense was at the high 80s. Even with that, the conference outlook wasn't looking good as we were projected to finish 2nd to last on our side, and 5 games into the season, it was looking like that was going to be be true as we were sitting at a record of 1-4. We're looking to get things back on track against Mizzou as we had tons of prospect coming to this game. Unfortunately for us though, the first half was absolutely abysmal as we were down 3 possessions going into halftime, and we had to get used to a newer quarterback as we had Travis Wall under center now and he was a pure pocket passer. But late in the fourth, down by 10, Travis was making good reads getting the score, and with 43 seconds left in the game, Mizzou kicked a field goal, so we were down by 6 and needed a touchdown, so Travis Wall needed to get us down the field. And even though we were down by 17 earlier in this game, Travis was showing that he had great poise as he was able to take this team all the way back and somehow find Dustin Martin on the right side getting a big touchdown, and somehow we had taken the lead even after being down by 3 possessions earlier in this game, and it all came down to a Hail Mary, and luckily it went to the ground as we pulled off an insane comeback and what was one of the better wins that we've had in this rebuild. That game would prove its importance as we had tons of players commit to the program after the game. The momentum didn't carry from there as going into our last game we were sitting at a 4-7 record, but it was time for us to take on our in-state rivals Georgia Tech. It seemed like the team didn't like playing good unless they were down by points, so they made sure to get down early against Georgia Tech, and Dante Johnson somehow was able to slip away from multiple defenders getting a score, but on the very next drive on 4th down we were unable to get a conversion. Next thing we knew, we were down by 10 points with only 40 seconds left in the second quarter, but Travis Wall was proving that he loved playing from behind as he was able to get a score bringing it down to 3. Our defense was able to get a turnover on the very next play, and Travis Wall was able to find his tight end to give us the lead, and all of a sudden this game had completely flipped as we were able to get a touchdown coming out of the third quarter. That would lead to a huge game by Travis Wall and what ended up becoming a dominating win for Georgia. This is what the recruiting class looked like towards the end of the season with a lot of great players coming to the program, but the recruiting class didn't matter as we still had a lot of goals to complete for Coach Kirby. Going into year number 6, we were trying not to repeat what happened last season as we were trying to get more than 5 wins going into next year. Like normal, there would be a decent amount of players graduating, but Georgia would yet again finish with the #1 class in the nation. The team was looking a lot better this year as we now had 2 players over 90 overall and a lot of players with the high 80s, and that's why the team overall was sitting at an 88 with the offense sitting at a 90. The team was now projected to finish 4th in the SEC, but unfortunately we'd be sitting at 2-2 going into our week 5 game against Oklahoma. The team was looking to get back on track and save their season against Oklahoma this game, and luckily for us, we were finally able to get points on the board first. Luckily for us, our defense was able to get a stop on Oklahoma's first possession, and the offense was looking to build upon that as Brad Ellis made a huge play getting past the red zone and getting close to the 10-yard line, and after scanning many targets, Travis Wall found him yet again for another touchdown. Our defense would get another stop and the offense would be able to capitalize yet again, but things weren't looking the best late in the third quarter as our defense gave up back-to-back touchdowns and our quarterback Dustin Martin fumbled the ball, which allowed Oklahoma to capitalize on the short field and they were able to take the first lead of the game. And Coach Dunn was losing his mind on the sidelines. With the thought of blowing the lead in the back of his mind, Travis Wall didn't let that affect him as he found Brad Ellis for a score, but our defense would give up another touchdown, so on 4th and 6 we had to make a big play and Matt Jolly was able to do that, getting a first down, and from there our offense continued driving down the field and Brad Ellis continued getting open, and on the very next play we were able to punch it in. That would ensure that the Bulldogs didn't blow their big lead and what would be a close 4-point victory over the Sooners. 8 games into the season now, Georgia was sitting at a 5-3 record, and they were hoping to get their first win against Florida in this rebuild. If there was ever a time for Florida to finally lose to Georgia, it would be this year as they were sitting at a 3-4 record and Georgia was looking like the better team. This would prove in the first possession as they would drive all the way down getting a score, but Florida would make sure to answer back getting 3, but our offense was proving that they were on another level with Wall finding Ellis yet again on the left side. It took me a while to get used to Travis playing as a pure pocket passing quarterback, but once I finally figured out what his game entailed, Travis Wall became one of the better quarterbacks that I had ever played with, making great throws and finding Matt Jolly for a huge play in the first drive of our next possession, and he was able to capitalize on that, extending our lead from 28-3. There wouldn't be any 28-3 leads blown this time, as we would end up dominating Florida by 25 points, and Coach Kirby was finally able to knock beating Florida off of his goal sheet. The team would have another huge victory against number 17 ranked Auburn, and the very next game would be extremely important as there were tons of prospects coming to the school. Tied at 14 apiece early in the second quarter, it was proving that both defenses hadn't been off to the best start. And like normal, Travis Wall was staying poised in the pocket and he was making great throws to the outside, finding his receivers. And with the Wildcats only sitting 3, they were giving Travis too much time in the pocket as he was able to sit back, look over his reads, and make a great throw. As mentioned, the defenses had been playing poorly, leading to Kentucky scoring again. And late in the fourth quarter, the team found themselves by 3 points, and Travis Wall knew who to find, and he found Brad Ellis in the middle of the field. And later on that drive, after sitting in the pocket for a long time, Brad Ellis was able to get open yet again. On the next play, Wall was able to find James Mooney over the middle, but Kentucky just wouldn't go away as they were driving all the way down the field with only 20 seconds left in the game. And with no pressure from the defensive line, the Kentucky quarterback had all day in the pocket, and he was able to sit back and make a great throw to his receiver, getting a touchdown, taking the lead. So with 12 seconds left in the game, we were looking to get a good kickoff return so that we can get a good Hail Mary chance, but all of a sudden, all the blocks opened up and the field looked green, and it looked like McGee was going to take it all the way down to the house, which he was able to do, but look at that in the bottom right corner. Apparently, one of our offensive players had a clipping call, and all of a sudden, that touchdown was taken off the board, and we were attempting a Hail Mary, which we were able to complete, but we wouldn't get a touchdown. That would be one of the most devastating games that I had ever been a part of in what was a close 3-point defeat against Kentucky. Luckily, the troops would rally back next week, destroying Georgia Tech, and they would have a bowl game against number 20 Wisconsin. They would finish off the season with yet another 10-point victory, and these are the goals that we still have yet to complete. With the team starting off so poorly last season, it was surprised that they finished with a 9-4 record, and we were looking to build upon that going into year number 7. alone, but we would have to do it without one of our best players, Dustin Martin, and several other key pieces of the offense. Kirby Durham would pull in 3 straight top 2 ranked classes, and the team was looking extremely good going into year number 7. This could finally be the year that Georgia pulls everything together, as they were a 90 overall in every single category, with their defense being a 95. With this, they were projected to finish their highest yet in the conference at number 2, but they started off the season poorly with a bad loss to Ole Miss. They were able to pick it up in the next game against number 22 South Carolina and continue that streak by destroying an FCS school. It was now time to jump into our game against Oklahoma, and it was crucial that we played teams on our side of the SEC, as we may be playing for a conference championship later this year if we play our cards correctly. Of course, we still had a long way to go in this season, and after that first loss to Ole Miss, I was kind of nervous for how the rest of this year would go, but Will Anderson was able to pull in a crazy catch, and if I knew I didn't have to worry about one thing, it was Travis Wall's throwing ability as he found his tight end over the middle, and our defense kept getting stops, which allowed us to go up by multiple possessions. Unfortunately for us, the Sooners would have 17 unanswered points, leading to us being down by 3 late in the third quarter, but Travis Wall was able to find Tim Robinson over the middle. Our defense would give up yet another touchdown in the very next drive, but thankfully for us, our offense came to play today as they were able to drive down yet again, getting another score. Our defense was finally able to get a stop, and with only 2 minutes left in the fourth quarter, we had a key third down conversion to continue running out the rest of the clock, which is exactly what we were able to do, and a crucial 7-point victory over the Sooners. I would simulate our next game against number 8 Tennessee, in which we absolutely throttled them, but now this would be our most important game of the season against Mizzou, as we were the top 2 teams on our side of the SEC. In years past, we had chances of taking the lead in the SEC, but it seemed like we could never get the job done, but Matt Jolly was able to make a big play on first down, and that was huge for us as we were down by 4 points at the start of the third quarter, but our offense was looking to get things right as they were able to get a touchdown, and after our defense was finally able to get a stop, Travis Wall continued making good throws, and after being in the red zone and having nobody open, Travis decided to use his slow legs to somehow outrun defenders and get a touchdown, and from there we were able to hold on to our lead, and what became a dominating victory over Mizzou. The team would go on to destroy Vanderbilt in the very next game, as they now sat number 1 in the SEC in a huge game against Florida. Even with that loss earlier in the year, Georgia still controlled their destiny as they were number 1 in the conference and sitting at 5 in the nation. So thankfully, after being down by multiple possessions, Travis Wall was finally able to get us on the board, and going into the fourth quarter, we were only down by 3 points. Travis Wall was trying to prove to us and NFL scouts that he had the clutch gene, as every single week we were down, he was making great plays, and that was able to prove true yet again, as late in the fourth quarter, down by 3 points, he was able to roll out to the left side, finding his running back for a good touchdown, and from there, our defense was able to get multiple stops, and what was a close 5-point victory over Florida. The team would go on to have a close victory against Auburn in the next one, and 10 games into the season, Georgia was sitting at a 9-1 record. We would be forced to continue simulating games because we had already played our 3 for the season. Luckily for us, we were able to get a dominating win over a top 10 opponent, and they were barely able to squeak out a win against Georgia Tech. This would lead to Georgia playing Texas in the SEC championship, so things weren't good when Texas was able to drive all the way down the field, getting on the board first. If Georgia loses this game, then the entire season would be for nothing, as the team would most likely miss out on the college football playoffs and would have no conference championship to show for it, but thankfully Wall was able to find one of his number 1 receivers to tie up the game. The defense would get a key stop on 4th and goal on the very next possession, and on the very next drive, the Texas defense had a breakdown in coverage, leading to one of our players being wide open. Texas was proving that they earned their spot in the SEC championship as they were able to tie things up late in the second quarter, but we were able to drive all the way down before halftime, getting a touchdown, leading to us going up by 7, and that was great for the team as Georgia started off with the ball first in the third quarter, and Matt Jolly was able to somehow get wide open, getting a touchdown, extending the lead, but after Texas was able to score, cutting into it a little bit, our offense was able to successfully run out the rest of the clock from there. We would go on to have our biggest victory of the entire rebuild, and not only could Kirby Durham finally hoist the SEC championship, but he could finally knock that off his goal list. That would lead to us playing Florida State in the first round of the playoffs, and since we made the playoffs, no matter what happens now, if we lose one of the next 2 games, Coach Kirby would be fired up to the game, officially losing us the rebuild challenge. So thankfully for us, Travis Wall was finding an open receiver in James Mooney, and he was able to use his legs, getting all the way down close to the 6-yard line. On the very next play, he was able to find Matt Jolly to get the first points, and he was spreading the wealth by finding Desmond Moore later on in the first. After getting a field goal and getting some more points on the board, we were able to go up by 11 points, and even with the team playing well up until this point, FSU has been cutting the lead down as we were only up by 4 points, but Desmond Moore wanted to change that by being wide open, but the Seminoles were able to cut the lead to 1 possession before halftime. Luckily for them, they were starting off with the ball first in the second half as they were able to decrease the lead even more, and even though it seemed like the team had been playing extremely well up until this point, we only found ourselves up by 2 points, and Desmond Moore was still continuing to make big plays each and every drive, and thankfully we were able to extend our lead by finding Tim Anderson on the left side. FSU was proving that they were a great team as their running back was able to get away from multiple defenders, getting another score, but on the first play of our next drive, we were able to find James Mooney on the left side, and he was able to use his legs to get all the way down to the end zone, extending our lead. As you can imagine, FSU was able to go all the way down the field yet again, scoring a touchdown, cutting into our lead, and Travis was feeling the pressure as we were only up by 3 points, and on third down, he tried to force the ball, leading to an interception, and the Florida offense was making sure that they capitalized on that as they were unstoppable, getting another touchdown. Our quarterback was trying to forget the pass as we've now found ourselves down by 4 points with the first deficit all game, and we needed to have one of our best drives of the entire rebuild to get all the way down the field and get a touchdown. Thankfully, Travis was making all the right reads up until this point, and he was able to find James Mooney to give us the lead back, and that led to Mooney breaking a school record for school receiving yards in a game. That play would lead to us holding on to the rest of our lead, as we now now found ourselves playing Michigan in the college football championship. Coming off the emotions of that game, Coach Kirby wanted to have an absolutely dominating performance in this one, getting a blowout, but that was going to be tough as we were playing one of the best teams in the nation again. On our first drive, we were only able to get 3 points on the board, whereas Michigan was able to get all the way down the field and their quarterback was somehow able to scramble out to the outside and run into the end zone completely untouched and needed some points. And following his performance from last week, Wall knew that he needed to get James Mooney involved, and he was able to get him on the left side for the first touchdown of the game. The Bulldogs had incredible depth, how it seemed like every single week we had a new player making a big play, and this time it was Eric Denman who was able to break away from 2 defenders, extending our lead. But Michigan would cut into that late in the second quarter as they scored a touchdown right before half. Going into halftime, we would only be up by 6 points, and that lead would be cut even more as Michigan scored on their first drive. Late in the first quarter, Travis Wall was able to find a familiar receiver in Desmond Moore who was able to make a big play, and a couple plays later, Travis Wall made the right read as he found his running back in the flats on the right side, and he was able to break away from 2 defenders, getting a touchdown. But it wouldn't matter as on the very next drive, Michigan would score yet again. We were up by 3 points late in the fourth, and we were looking to kill out the rest of the clock, and on a huge third down, James Mooney was able to get a first down, and from there on 3rd and 7, Travis Wall was able to get a huge key first down conversion, which led to the players hoisting up Coach Kirby dumb, as he was somehow able to pull one of the worst rosters in college football history, and only in 7 seasons he was able to turn it completely around and get a championship. And lastly, Coach Kirby was finally able to knock off every single goal on his goal list. And if you want to see me save another program from NCAA sanctions, click on the middle of the screen now to see me rebuild Arizona State.